TV. 8. everybody, and welcome to another edition of In Pit Lane Live. Yes, so there was a brief flash of the starting graphic again. Yes, it was once again for another edition of In Pit Lane. You know, it's funny. I had some medication just recently, and on the medication is a little sticker which says, "Warning: this medication may cause drowsiness and may increase the effects of alcohol." And they were saying this as if it was a bad thing. I mean, to me, that's a marketing ploy. I don't care if I can walk into a shop and buy something that both makes me drowsy and increases the effect of alcohol. I'm buying it. I don't care what it is. I'm having it. So I don't know why there's so warning. I don't understand that. I think it's very subtle marketing. Now, coming up a little bit later on, speaking of marketing, somebody who's very heavily involved in marketing over the years has been James Warburton. You may have heard of him. He was the CEO of Supercars. Well, he still is and will be until towards the end of the year, but he's going back to the wonderful world of advertising. And we'll be talking about his departure from Supercars tonight with our guests and my co-host Nick Scarcella, and also from Melbourne Performance Car Centre and under 2 litre sports sedans and all sorts of things over the years. Lee Partridge will be joining us as well. We're also going to talk about the state of grassroots motorsport, state level motorsport. Everyone talks about what's happening with the V8s, as we will, but let's talk about what's happening at the grassroots level as well. That's coming up a little bit later on in the program. I just want to say to everybody in Adelaide, didn't get a chance to wander around too much. We were very busy, but when we did go out into the pits and talk to people, it was great to see a lot of people who watched the show over the years, and it was terrific. So thank you to everybody in Adelaide who made us feel most welcome with our live stream of the Spring Nationals. If you didn't see the live stream, you can catch up with it now. It is available on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. You can also see highlights of it right now in the In Pit Lane Motorsport News. Andra Championship Drag Racing returned to Adelaide International Raceway with the 30th running of the Spring Nationals, with plenty of tyre smoking and fire-breathing action from start to finish. A highlight for the crowd at AIR, as well as almost 14,000 watching online, was the USA versus Australia Jet Car Challenge. The USA machine, driven by Peter Bedford, took out 2 victories to Australia's 1, after Darren DeFilippo's Aussie car failed to stage for the final pass. In the popular Supercharged Outlaws bracket, Tim Stewart was a back-to-back round winner, with victory in Adelaide following on from his Mildura round win last month, winning the final against a red-lighting Jason Keeley. Melbourne driver Jess Turner was strong all day and defeated Max Cerny in the final of the modified bracket. Tony Frost on his Suzuki GSXR won competition bike, taking out Robin Kasser in the final. Junior Dragster winner Bradley Bishop only had to take the green light to win after Andrew Shirley was unable to compete after issues with his car. In Supercon, Daniel Camilleri converted his top qualifier position into an event win over Stephen Normans, setting a new Double D GA 1,000-foot record in his Pontiac Firebird along the way. Shane Walker was another top qualifier to take the win after defeating Johnny Ireland in the final of modified bike. Super Street was taken out by defending champion Chris Tatchell in his Holden Tirana, who faced off against Jason Neve for the win. In Supergas, local driver Bailey Datson defeated Warren Bull, while top sportsman went to Paul Russo in his 57 Chev after a win over top qualifier Darren Nichelle. And in Super Sedan, defending champion George Tipicadias took the win in a double breakout final against Ned Koronovic. In more drag racing news, Brittany Force has returned to the winner's circle at the Texas Motorplex with a brand new track record to beat Sean Langdon in the final of Top Fuel. The victory moves her into second place in the championship. Robert Height raced to a 3.87 second pass of 332.34 miles per hour to defeat reigning world champion and funny car points leader Ron Capps, closing the gap in the points standing to Capps to just 24 points. Defending Pro Stock World Champion Jason Line found himself in the winner's circle for the second time this season after running a 6.54 second pass in his Chevrolet Camaro to take down Drew Skillman, who lost on a red light. And in Pro Stock Motorcycle, Eddie Craywick rode his Harley Davidson to victory over a red-lighting Jerry Savoy. Torrential rain turned last Sunday's Fuji round of the World Endurance Championship into almost high farce. It was a win for the home team with a Toyota 1-2 in the wet and foggy conditions. Sebastian Buemi, Kazuki Nakajima and Anthony Davison took their Toyota to victory ahead of the sister car driven by Kamui Kobayashi, Mike Conway and Jose Maria Lopez. The result means that this year's driver's title is still up for grabs as the leading Porsche trio of Brendan Hartley, Earl Bamber and Timo Bernhardt finished back in 4th place. Ferrari claimed maximum points in LMGTE Pro and AM categories as AF Corsa Ferraris James Collado and Alessandro Piaguidi drove their Ferrari to first place in the Pro category. LMP2 saw the Valiente Rebellion crew of Bruno Senna, Nicholas Prost and Julian Canal take out their second victory of the season. And taking the first win of the season was the Spirit of Race Ferrari trio of Thomas Floor, Francesco Castellacci and Miguel Molina. Next up on the calendar is the 6 Hours of Shanghai on Sunday, the 5th of November, the 8th round of the 9-race season. Wet conditions also at Suzuka for the Japanese MotoGP. It was another thriller and a closely fought win to Andrea Dovizioso, who steered his Ducati to victory over championship leader Marc Marquez to close the gap as the teams head to Phillip Island next weekend. Marquez looked to have the race in the bag until suffering a major wobble at turn 8 on the last lap, allowing Dovizioso to make the race-winning pass at turn 11. It was a 1-3 result for Ducati, with a great ride by Daniele Petrucci giving him the final step on the podium. It wouldn't be a NASCAR race at Talladega without the big one, and it came late in the race, taking out several of the championship's top contenders. The crash came with 17 laps remaining. 16 cars were involved in the incident, including 6 of the 12 remaining NASCAR playoff contenders. That included Martin Truex Jr., David Reagan, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Busch. The race was won in a thrilling last-lap fight-out by Brad Keselowski, who passed Ryan Newman on the high side of the track to take the win. Team Penske teammate Joey Logano was third. The win gives Keselowski an automatic berth into the third round of the playoffs and gave Ford a season sweep of the 4 major restrictor plate races. Second place in the series final at Hockenheim was enough to give Audi driver Rene Rust the 2017 DTM Championship. BMW driver and outgoing champion Marco Wittmann won the race, but Rust's second place gave the DTM rookie driver the title by just 3 points ahead of teammates Matthias Ekstrom and Jamie Green. Mike Rockenfeller was third in his Audi, with Gary Paffett, the first of the Mercedes home, in 4th place. And a bonus for DTM fans at Hockenheim, with an appearance by cars from the Japanese Super GT series. In a carefully orchestrated demonstration event, the 2-litre turbo cars of Nissan and Lexus took to the track on each day of the race weekend. DTM cars will run similar demonstration laps at the Super GT season finale at Motegi in November. The demonstration is part of a continued push between DTM and Super GT to introduce a joint set of regulations for 2019. Could those regulations also be a part of Australian supercars' future? Well, they should be, but probably won't. Motorclassica was held last weekend in Melbourne, and once again the event was a roaring success. With the closure of its local manufacturing arm this week, this year's event paid a special tribute to Holden, from its days as a Melbourne coach builder through to its impressive range of concept cars, its most famous race cars, and road cars that shaped our lives and memories. The company also took the opportunity to show off its all-new imported Commodore, which I felt was a little insensitive. I mean, it's a bit like coming to your wife's funeral arm in arm with your new 19-year-old girlfriend. Speaking of middle-aged men and their middle-age crises, Ferrari was on show as well to commemorate 70 years of being the car that everybody wants to own. Until, of course, they actually own one. An impressive collection of Ferraris from some of the very earliest through to the current LaFerrari hypercar did what they do best: sat in a corner, looking pretty. The Lancia is a bit like the Ferrari for those who can't afford or just don't want a Ferrari. It's a bit like the Windows PC of the Italian sports car world to Ferrari's Macintosh. The star car for many at this year's show, though, was this Jaguar D-Type, which was expected to fetch up to $8 million at Saturday night's auction. In the end, the car failed to sell, a bit like me at the annual high school social, full of wonderful hope and expectation, but ultimately failing to raise any real interest and going home alone. Oh well. As always, next year.
naturally.
Want to know more about In Pit Lane? Well, you can support us via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/In Pit Lane. Remember to subscribe and like our YouTube channel. Check out the In Pit Lane website for lots of live streaming and all the latest news. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, email us at theshow@inpitlane.com, and to find out more about effective and affordable advertising for your company or products, email us at advertise@inpitlane.com. In Pit Lane, 21 years, and they haven't killed us yet. And the light came on camera one, so that's the one I'm going to look at. Well, as you might know if you've been reading the local media, local motorsport media, James Warburton, CEO of Supercars Australia, has decided to quit effective at the end of this year. He's going back into the world of advertising. If you don't know his history, James Warburton was considered some enfant terrible of Australian advertising. He was the absolute whiz kid. Went to Channel 7, cemented his name there as a very successful person in the world of television, and then went to Channel 10 and, well, things didn't end particularly well in that case. Does anyone remember Yasmin's getting married? Yeah, I bet you James does. But James is about to pull out. The thing is, what does it mean for the sport? And James, has he done a good job? Has he done a bad job? Does he get a tick or does he get a cross? To find out, we're going to talk to two of our guests tonight. They're both involved in motorsport, particularly at the grassroots level, and more about that later. But joining us from, well, he's one of the stars of Phillip Island Auto Racing Club's Club Night. He is Nick Scarcella. Nick, welcome to In Pit Lane. And alongside him from Melbourne Performance Centre and regular in the under 2 litre sports stands is Lee Partridge. Lee, welcome to In Pit Lane.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Now, let's, well, first of all, Lee, let's start with you. James Warburton, yes or no?
Look, I think it's a hard one for me to judge. I see a lot of different sides of it through work, and you get lots of different stories, and you don't know whether a lot of them are true because they're so removed from the actual scene of the crime, so to speak. Personally, from what I've seen, I see him on TV, and I don't see much passion for the sport. I see a businessman, where I look at Cochrane, and I've seen a passionate guy for motorsport. Now, whether that's actually true or not, it's hard for me to judge. I don't know the guy, but that's one thing that I've seen, and I've heard other people mention it as well. I think, could someone do a better job? I think always someone else can do a better job, no matter who you are and what job you are. Some of the things that have happened for Supercars, I can't say are completely in his control, but probably not totally out of his control either. So time will tell. We'll see who gets the role and whether they do a better job. I mean, that will be the judgment on how good a job he did, is how good a job the next guy does it, or girl.
I think the interesting thing is it sort of depends on, as you say, who you talk to. From the feedback that I get from other people within the teams, and I don't get a lot of feedback because it's very much a closed shop nowadays, Supercars. But from what I hear from people who do talk to us on these things, is most of the teams have been very impressed with what he does, but he's obviously got a radically different style to someone like Tony Cochrane, because Tony was very gregarious. He was out there. He was fabulous with us. As I said, we always had a great relationship with Tony Cochrane. James Warburton, we never spoke to him. Refused every opportunity for an interview, and it's like it's goodbye, James. It's as if we hardly knew you.
And I think it's getting back to what you were just saying about he'll be judged on the next person. He had very big shoes to fill in Cochrane. And even sort of Cochrane's come out today and sort of made a couple of comments, a couple of little clips there, which will be quite interesting to see what happens over the next couple of days. When you look at what they've achieved, if you look at the whole media thing with going to pay TV, if you talk to the teams, it's great. If you talk to the fans, there's still that pushback. I think it's the moving way of the world these days.
It's interesting, I mean, because obviously somebody's got to pay for these things, and pay TV, it's a bit like sort of, any sort of, position of power and privilege. If you're in that position, you say, well, I've got it, I think it's fabulous, anybody can get it, but that's not the case. The fact is, less than 30% of the population have pay TV, and their figures are going down. They went down by over 100,000 last year. So if it keeps going on like that, the audience, despite whatever James Warburton said, and there has been some very creative accounting being done with crowd figures and television ratings, I can tell you, but that's, but he's very good at that. That was his job.
That's his job.
That's his job in advertising. He was a specialist at it. Do you think that that perhaps that one of the reasons he's getting out is because he's got a better set of binoculars and he can see that sort of white thing on the horizon is not a whale breaching but a bloody great iceberg?
Oh, I don't think he's got to where he has in the world of business without sort of forecasting. There's a lot of things. If you look at the last couple of years with the GT categories and a lot of categories that are sort of trying to come up, and obviously yourself being involved in that, there is that. Well, what's going to happen to supercars now? We've obviously got now Andretti sort of buying in with Zach Brown to Walkinshaws. That's got to be a good thing for the sport in a short term, but time's going to tell.
Lee, Nick was mentioning the association with Australian GT. We know that now Australian GT is coming under more control from supercars. From the feedback from the people that you deal with day to day, what's the GT community's view of all of this?
I think it's, and this should be well known. One of the biggest things is the difference between the two categories. Australian GT is a customer-based program. These guys who own cars that like to go racing the cars that they own. And V8 Supercars is a business, it's a show. It's like a circus, literally. So you can't compare the two and you can't use the two in the same essence. So, you've got customers that you've got to keep happy with GT racing. So you've got to work with them as well as provide a good show for what is expected to be put on TV. So marrying the two, in theory, shouldn't be that difficult. But I'm sure we'll all find a way to make it hard for ourselves. But I think it's going to be a good thing for V8 Supercars taking over Australian GT. As long as everyone works together, they've got to realise that without those customers buying those race cars and running them, they won't have that show. And at the same time, those guys won't have a series to run those cars in if they don't go and work with supercars. So time will tell big time. I think it's going to be a good thing personally. Wait and see.
How do you think the big challenge coming up for whoever takes over is going to be to convince a lot of traditional supercar fans to continue watching supercars when there are no or a dwindling number of Aussie V8s? Do you think that's going to be the big change? There's so many people online saying, we'll never ever watch it again. We'll never. Like if you're going to not watch the category because of the number of cylinders the cars have, I think you're obviously not much of a fan to begin with. But things, smaller things have made bigger differences.
Look, times change though. If you look at it, there was that whole Holden Ford thing. We then went to Group A, which at the time wasn't received, but now, 20, 30 years into it, we all sort of reveal how good Group A was when you go to historics now. So I think you hit the nail on the head. The people that sort of go, no, I'm not going to watch it, they're still going to watch it. It's just to what degree. I think something definitely has to be done to sort of get, if you look at what Liberty Media have done with F1 to sort of reaching back out to the fans, that's what I think supercars need to do.
Because a lot of the support that people have for the racing, you've got to take the cars away from it these days. The whole race on Sunday, sell on Monday thing's gone. People don't really care too much because there's a lot of cars out there that are good and all that kind of stuff. So I think the way Liberty Media, you brought it up, they've got to look at what those platforms are doing with their drivers and the way NASCAR works. They emphasise on it's a bit like a TV show, the rivalries between drivers and the characters and all that kind of stuff. The more they concentrate on that and take away the Ford Holden thing, I think the better off they'll be. The model works with NASCAR. They're trying to, with F1, with driver introductions and stuff like that, and emphasise the racing on the spectacle rather than the details. The details in the cars can be brought down a level, I think, and it's happening all around the world and it's looking like it's working. So let's hope they go that way.
And the other thing they've got to do, which NASCAR does absolutely brilliantly, and you'll see the highlights that we have every week. Our dealings, we actually deal with NASCAR. We're just this show in small, no budget show in Melbourne, Australia, and yet the treatment that we get from NASCAR is just spectacularly good, compared with the treatment that we get from V8 supercars, which is just being totally ignored at worst and sort of abused at best. But okay, well, obviously that's sort of at the top end of the sport, but let's talk about in a moment where we are sort of more the state level and the club level, which you're both involved with, and we'll get onto that in just a moment. But what I want to once again tell you about, of course, is our Patreon page. As I've said a couple of times, the whole sort of change in media landscape, everything is radically different now. And as I said before, it's like if you go in, you want to buy a magazine, you don't just walk into the supermarket, help yourself or the newsagent and walk out with it without paying. You actually have to pay something. And if you want to see shows like In Pit Lane continue, then you've really got to sort of get behind them, because the days of big advertisers coming in and throwing dollars at these things are well and truly over, regrettably. So we'd really appreciate it if you would like to help keep In Pit Lane not just on the air, but growing with more shows, with more live streams, with a whole bunch of other special features. Then go to the Patreon page, and from as little as $1.25 a week, you can support In Pit Lane. As I said, if we get 100 people giving us $125 a week, that's more greasy chicken that we can feed the crew. So so get onto Patreon. Also, if you would like to sponsor us, if you'd like to have some advertising or some product promotion on the program, get in touch with us at advertise@inpitlane.com. Now, as we said, both of you involved in the world of state racing, Victorian state racing, and we've covered for many years here on In Pit Lane. Nick, from your point of view, what's the current state of state racing? To me, sort of, I just don't think it's been. It seems the numbers seem to be down, and to be honest with you, in the way that it's being run, at least in Victoria, it's a bit of a dog's breakfast.
I think we were talking about it before we come on air now. I've come from sports stands and now run a Hyundai Excel. So two completely different cars.
God's own sports car.
God's own sports car, exactly. You've gone from sports Vs, you've gone basically right through. Some of the categories are booming. Some you sort of look at and go, okay, you've got 15, 20 cars on the grid. It's not a spectacle. I think, look, my opinion is, I think all the organisations involved need to work to get better and look at some of the amalgamation of fields. I know a lot of people don't like it, but people that are coming, the paying fans, and we only get a few that come along, they want to see cars. They don't want to sort of see, there goes one, oh, there's another three, and then that's it. I think just a little bit of thought needs to be put into process.
Well, Nick mentioned Formula V there. I mean, Formula V was once, you could guarantee that you were going to get lots of close racing and really big fields. Last year or so, the fields have just suddenly, where have all these cars gone all of a sudden?
Oh, look, it's a bit hard to say about Formula V. I'm not directly associated with them the last couple of years, but I see a lot of different categories through Victorian State Series. You speak to the guys who aren't racing and the guys who are, and there's a lot of different answers as to why they're not racing. There's not one particular answer, I don't think. The cost is one thing, but that's always been there. It's really hard. I've spoken to many different category managements and stuff like that. It's really hard to put your finger on the button of what the biggest problem is, let alone the only problem, because there's just so many of them. You've got to make it affordable. I think CAMs do need to step in and try and help out a bit. As a competitor and as someone who's held a licence for a long period of time, the only real association I've ever seen with CAMs at a racetrack is when I get breath tested, or I've got to do a urine test, or you see an official walk past who doesn't really want to talk to you. I don't really have any association with CAMs apart from just paying them a yearly fee. To get back and involved in motorsport, I think would be a good thing. Obviously, that's going to come at a cost as well, so it's going to be a hard one to judge. I don't think that's the only answer, but it would be nice to see CAMs get involved and help out. Yeah, it's really hard to, I mean, you could talk to 10 different categories and get 10 different answers on what they want. And so I don't think you can give the competitors what they want, or you can't just say, look at it as a spectator's point of view and say, well, let's give them what they want, because there's not that many spectators. State racing is there and only stays there because of the competitors. So I think we do have to focus on the competitors. If you focus on supporting the competitors and helping them get sponsors, we've got 5 or 6 sponsors on the sports sedan this year, and they're really associated with us, and it's really great. But we can't really give them much in regards to the show when we go to the racetrack. And obviously with no TV coverage and stuff like that, it is hard. So I think if we get support behind the competitors, then promoters will see that the competitors are doing really well and they'll want a piece of that action and they'll help out, and it'll snowball effect and get better. So it's just one of those things, we've just got to play it out. I think years to come we'll have the similar sort of conversation, but the answers will be all different. So it's just motor racing's hard, no matter what level.
Well, Nick, coming from the point of view of PIARC, Phillip Island Auto Racing Club, they run a couple of meetings during the year. Isle of Magic coming up at the end of the year. always said, one of the best race meetings you could ever go to anywhere in Australia during the year. Even that over the year. I mean, I know that a couple of years ago there were some big plans involving the tourism board down there. We had some things to go, and there was just zero interest in promoting this thing. I mean, we were going to shut the main street off. There were going to be bands. There were going to be live coverage, all sorts of things. No one was interested.
I think the biggest thing too is you're fighting for so much attention these days. Now, when you go out and sort of look at what's out there, how people are going about doing things, you've got so much going on. Everyone's on their phone. Everyone's got this. One of the things that I think, the way the calendar is probably put, you've got stuff here. Maybe we need to look at the calendar a bit more so you're not overlapping events. Like we had, I think we did something of the case of 6 race meets in 9 weeks. Now, when you've got sort of young families like Lee and myself, it's hard to sort of go, okay, well, we're going to do this meet, do this meet. That's what sort of takes its toll.
And that's coming up now. Yeah. I mean, we've got a bit of a break in Victoria, but I think, basically come sort of November, I think we've got something virtually every week through until the middle of December, which is obviously, it's hard on the competitors, it's hard on particularly the officials, who are just, giving up every single weekend and giving up, 12, 14-hour days for no pay at all, and nobody seems to worry about that.
No, and that's one of the things too, the credit, where credit's due, should go to those officials that sort of rain, hail, shine, whatever it may be, will be out there making sure that the job's done so we can go and have a bit of fun. We can show much appreciation as drivers to them, but I think, it needs to be, like you've said before, I think there needs to be sort of maybe a higher power encouraging it as well. Because if they're not there, we're not there.
Well, just quickly, next week on the program, our guest will be John Davison, and John Davison is running for, he has plans to run for the presidency of the Confederation of Australian Motorsport. If you were talking to possibly the future president, I mean, what should he be running on? What should the policies be? What would you like to see come out of CAMS?
Look, I think he's a good man for the job. I don't know him personally, but having that background in the sport is going to help. The amount of times we've seen that job filled by people that no one's ever really heard of in our sport. No offence to them, but I just think that passion, and that's what this sport relies on, passion. I said it before, I'll always say it, and I think those roles, when those higher roles are filled by someone with passion for the sport, good things will come. So I don't think anyone really needs to tell him what they do. I reckon he's got a pretty good idea. He's still got his finger around motorsport and still knows how it's working these days, so we'll see how we go.
Now, just quickly before we go, we've got to point out Melbourne Performance Centre has just moved to new premises, and this Saturday you've got a big open day. Tell us about that.
Yeah, big open day for Melbourne Performance Centre, a new facility at Croydon South. So we've got plenty of cars on display, all the Audi R8 LMS cars, some XV8 supercars, tarmac rally cars, gravel rally cars, all sorts of cool cars. Give a good opportunity to see the new factory and see what NPC Autospeed does. It's our road car side of the division. So yeah, come down 10 till 2 at Croydon South. Check out our Facebook page, our event, for more details. We'll see you there.
And Nick, what have you got coming up, and what do you want to plug?
Look, we've got obviously Isle of Magic coming up, 27th. Isle of Magic, so we've got the entry sort of coming through for that. And other than that, just got our club nights, and I hope to get back behind the wheel shortly myself.
Behind the wheel of the XL?
XL, or we'll run the Sports Sedan again.
We'll run the Commodore again?
Yeah, we'll see how it all goes.
Oh, it'll be lovely to see the Commodore out again. It's a beautifully presented car, as we've said on many occasions. Guys, thanks for coming in. Thanks for joining us in Pit Lane, and we'll see you out on the track very soon.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
And thank you to you at home. Now, as we said, yes, coming up next week, John Davison will be joining us. John, sort of, it came out of the blue, sort of on something on Facebook, a post on Facebook. Do you think I should run for presidency of CAMS? And a lot of people apparently said yes, but John's going to come on and tell us why he's interested in doing that next week on the program. So if you have any questions to Davo about what he plans for the presidency of CAMS, should he be elected, or his campaign, then perhaps you can shoot them to us here at In Pit Lane, at the show at In Pit Lane, or pop them down in the comments section below on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. Now, coming up, we've got some great music. Christian Mizzi, thank you, Christian, for coming in. We had a band scheduled for today. They pulled out sort of, for the last minute, and the entire Melbourne live music scene sort of went into meltdown, working with our music director, Leanne Campbell, to get everything, to make sure we had music here tonight. Christian put his hand up and said, yep, I will come in. He's got a brand new self-titled EP coming out now. You can see the details there. It's available on Bandcamp and also on his website, which is christianmizzi.com. He's also got an album out there on Bandcamp and Reverb Nation as well, which is called Midwinter Spring as well. So that's, and I think you're going to want to go out and get that music, because right now the single from his, that's where he's also got some live gigs coming up. Should remind you about that. The Malden Folk Festival on November the 3rd, and also October the 29th, he will be at the Brunswick Hotel. So, and also the Healesville Music Festival on the 11th of November. So there you go. So lots of opportunities to see there. And there you are. There's the details of the Melbourne Performance Centre Open Day, 22 Research Drive, Croydon. So look, we cater for all of your entertainment needs. Cars, bikes, music, just about everything. So to take us out tonight on the program, ladies and gentlemen, this is Christian Mizzi, and this is his new EP, his new self-titled EP, and it is All the Time, I Only Want You. Good night.
Try to live a life I think that matters, one that satisfies the questions in my soul, on a highway where my actions are the answers, mapped out with a heart that longs for home. I'm a stranger in a world that begs forgiveness, and I walk amongst the ones who lost control. Some are drowning in a sea of endless riches, some are sailing on the ruins of it all. Still I only want you all the time. It's funny how desire drives us crazy. Do we just want what we think we cannot have? Masters of the mountains climbed, but fools for all the wonders that lie waiting on the other side. Still I only want you all the time. I only want you all the time. Everybody's got a little weakness. Everybody burns for that one thing. Thank the stars for all that fuels our fires the deepest. This weakness of the heart so strengthening. I only want you. Oh.